Hey everybody, it's Tuesday and we're going to do some gaming content. I apologize if my mic peaks. I'm trying a slightly higher setting to get a bit better volume, but it's pushing red, so we'll see how this goes. Uh, as I put in the description box yesterday, but we did hit goal on Eileen's aunt's crowdfund over the weekend. Super exciting. More details about what's next as I get them. Eileen's obviously dealing with a lot of paperwork and stuff right now, so I will keep everybody up to date on what is going on with that, though, because I believe in having integrity. I believe when I ask you for money, you deserve to know where it's going, and you deserve to know that it was in fact used for what it said it was going to be used for. And it was kind of cool the way it went, because I put in I rounded it up to 19,000 pesos, which worked out to something like $1,320 Canadian. And it was at like 61% of goal. And so somebody else dumped in the remainder, which is about, $2,000 Canadian, no, $2,000 US, something like that. Anyway, and that happens, right? Once you get over a certain critical threshold, somebody's like, all right, this is actually happening. I can put money in. So that's cool. We do know who the donor is. They just want to stay anonymous. It's not a troll. And I've got the last money order going to the last person who won a refund. What I've been doing is I've been photographing the money order. This person originally said a check was okay. Some U.S. banks don't take Canadian checks. U.S. banking system, laud. But couldn't find my checks because it's been so long since I used a check. So I got a money order, and what I do, because you can't send registered mail to the U.S., so I take a picture of the money order before I put it in the mail. So if something does go awry, even if it takes a little while to get there, there's no standardization to times with the U.S. Postal Service. So they know every step of the way it's being taken care of. Because trust is easily lost, one, and it's hard to earn in the gaming industry because the industry has an integrity problem, and that's what I'm talking about today. This is not about any particular company, any particular people. I know some really great people with a lot of integrity in game dev. I am talking systemically, what the entire system rewards versus what the system punishes. And the system doesn't reward integrity right now. And this has been going on. I started noticing it around 2009. Yeah, more on that later. But I want to define integrity because there's two definitions of integrity, and I think they're linked in terms of gaming. The first definition, Oxford definition of integrity, is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. He is known to be a man of integrity is the sample sentence. And the second definition is the state of being whole and undivided. The sample sentence being upholding territorial integrity and national sovereignty, right? And I do believe that gaming is lacking in the first, the honesty part, because it's lacking in the second. The sheer amount of division in gaming right now is eroding the moral principles that, quite frankly, are essential to this business in a way that the film industry or the TV industry isn't, because let's face it, the sample risk with film and television isn't the same as the sample risk for games. You go and see a movie and it sucks, in the theater. It costs you, depending on the night, depending if you use points, $12 to $18, right? That's not as big an investment as games are $100 here now, AAA at launch. And one person did send me the money because they wanted to know my views on Veilguard. I'm going to finish the Alan Wake DLC this week because I either have to go and get Veilguard at the store or do that monster download, and I'm not going to have time to do it on Tuesday when the game releases, so it's going to be next week. I also find it's a little better with my Twitch viewers if they have a bit of time to play ahead, because they don't want to be spoiled. They want to play the game first and then see my reactions. And don't worry, Trails fans, I will be going back to Trails. It's just Alan Wake is my jam. And Remedy is an example of a company that I do believe has above average integrity in the industry. You can get pretty much all of Remedy's marketing documents, shareholder documents online on their website. They are not hiding anything. And just because people don't like some of the things that they prioritize, like diversity, equity, inclusion. Oh God, inclusion, how terrible. Yeah, inclusion's become a dirty word now. But they're not hiding it. They're not saying one thing and doing another. They're not putting on a face in public and then being totally different in private that I know of. And I just gotta give them credit for, one, spending so much time getting their IP back so that they can further the story. Talk about a roundabout route, having to go through Quantum Break and Control, and then they get the Alan Wake rights back, and then they merge them all together. Good on them. But they also, a lot of the critics counted them out last fall because of Mirage and Spider-Man 2. And it's kind of interesting because the only game people are talking about now is Alan Wake 2. Spider-Man. Spider-Man exists in a different universe. It's all great. Of course it was, right? Good on you, Insomniac. But Mirage was a pretty good game. And I mean, everybody's forgotten about that because Ubisoft has had such a rough year, sales-wise, and that's partially because of the expectations on these licensed IPs. And that's part of the problem. Expectations are monstrous right now. The sheer amount of money you need to make games of any scope mean you have to take money from some unscrupulous sources. I'm not going to name any because that'll be a distraction. But see, I keep peeking. The mic keeps over modulating. But yeah, when you're dealing with sums of money that large, you have to make deals with the devil. And it's a question of what part of your soul are you going to give away while hopefully maintaining the rest of it. And I know as somebody, Song of Sparkle Muffin was supposed to be a tiny little indie game, and it's amazing how quickly money chipped away. $100 here, $40 here, $65.99 here, just one thing after another. Thousands were just before you could blink. And it it's really stressful. Let me tell you. It's a lot. But and that's a small game. We weren't doing 3D or anything like that. When you get into, even a real simple Unity game, you can burn tens of thousands of dollars every month. So unless you're independently wealthy, you've got to get the money from somewhere. And when you're dealing with finance people, they usually expect you to compromise your values, and they usually expect you to take a certain amount of abuse, because all they have to say is, it's my money. They can threaten to not, send you payments anymore, and that's it. You're cooked, right? So that's one way that integrity sort of erodes, but that's true of most entertainment industries. You're always worrying about the network, you're worrying about ratings, you're worrying about, like, back in the day, syndication. Now it's streaming, like watch minutes, that kind of stuff. There's always that, but there's extra layers in gaming that, like I said, started back in 2009. Now, what happened in 2009? A lot of stuff happened in 2009. We were right in the middle of the X-Bro era, where, gaming was having this weird sort of artificial rebranding of the average gamer was a douche bro, not a quiet, nerdy guy that just wanted to play a Japanese RPG, right? Or a driving game or something like that. It was, that white guy in the hip hop gear with the brand new hat on sideways and all that bullshit. And that was artificial. But that created this false impression in the public. And that's when the struggle for the gaming industry's soul happened. Now, okay, granted, the amount of money involved exploded thanks to franchises that particular stereotypical kind of douche bro happens to like. It's easy to say, oh, that's the kind of guy that plays Grand Theft Auto, but Grand Theft Auto sells so many fucking copies. Lots of different kind of people play Grand Theft Auto. I don't know if it's possible to be a gamer for any amount of time and not own a copy of Grand Theft Auto 5. I do. I do. It was one of the few games I bought for the multiplayer, because it's pretty fun to play with the right people. But that created this image that divided, sacrificed the integrity in terms of wholeness of the gaming community in a way that, other than the political landscape, we don't have in any other area, right? You don't see, Formula One going to war with NASCAR in the racing field, right? It's like NASCAR's NASCAR and Formula One's Formula One. And they do their thing. And you don't see it, you don't see romance fans brawling with horror fans over in film, though it is starting to seep in with the hot take stuff. And, stuff like The Witcher pulling a massive demographic shift from the books and the games to TV. But that's generally a thing that's happening everywhere. They're kind of feminizing IPs because, like it or not, video games are still, that kind of video game is still male dominated. And that kind of prose fantasy fiction is still primarily male readers. You can write the exact same book, put it in science fiction, you'll get more men reading it. put it in romance or romantasy or even just straight up fantasy, you'll get more women reading it. It's the branding. It's just the is this for me test, right? And so gaming had that loss of integrity, wholeness, and then the loss of the moral core started. And I saw it starting to slip, like I said, around 2009, because that was when the negativity in reviews got really, really bad. And developers rightly went, well, we're not going to give people access who are just going to shit all over us. That's legitimizing just someone who is never going to like it. Of course, that led to a backlash, in the press. If you didn't give access, they were nasty to you, unless, of course, you were companies like Blizzard, who were known to retaliate. And, if you said anything bad about them, you were persona non grata, don't show up to their events. And that meant that people had to choose, do you give people your honest opinion or do you maintain your access? And this is why gaming became more like political reporting than anything else. Because, there's, in entertainment, more and more influencers are replacing reviewers. They are not the same thing. And we see this with Veilguard, Dragon Age Veilguard, that, there's the story that they only gave review codes to people who would be positive about the game. That's not a review at that point. That's street team marketing, right? That's influencing. That's trying to get yourself some early good vibes out of the gate because the negativity is coming. And you know what? That is a totally valid marketing strategy if you call it that. It's marketing. It's not a review. And if you're doing that, I should certainly hope that they're getting paid for that. Probably a lot of them aren't. They're just diehard fans with YouTube channels. But I did a couple of, got paid to write an article things. And the interference, the editorial interference was wild. It was always marked. It was not for any of the outlets I actually wrote for. And I didn't say anything I didn't actually believe. The weirdest thing about the stuff they wouldn't let through was it was actually praise, but I was comparing and contrasting. I remember I did a thing for Naruto, and I said, it's a refreshing change from the grimdark of stuff like Batman. And they told me to take out the Batman reference. I'm like, what the hell? They're like, it's a competitor. I don't see Batman and Naruto as at all the same, but their primary demographic is sort of the shonen crowd. So on paper they are. It's that kind of thing. But that, because I navigated that, maintaining my integrity, I know how hard it is. And I eventually stepped away from the whole, song and dance of trying to get review copies, because it wasn't great for traffic because everybody was putting their content out at the same time. There were weird things that went on, like companies telling you to disable your antivirus when it flagged on the review copy. If you were doing it on PC, I always refused to do that. And it probably prevented me from getting caught up in that Silk Song scam. And that's the other reason why integrity is so significant in this industry. In a way, in others, it's not. It's that so much communication is done strictly through text-based communications, and that is unique to gaming. Everything else I've worked on, you know, make a Zoom call, you get there, you chat, you work it out, and okay, then you follow up via email, but everybody knows everyone's a real person. Gaming's the only industry I've ever worked in where it is purely text. There's no, when I do the mental health stuff, we're communicating for setting up the interview, but the interview is real people when you actually talk to them. So there's gotta be a certain level of trust that has just been utterly demolished. And it was, that really started in earnest with, God, when did Mass Effect 3 come out? But it was Kane and Lynch really, really started it. And then it got worse. That was 2012 Mass Effect. It was Kane and Lynch 2. When did that come out? 2010. See, my timelines from memory are pretty much lining up. The industry got obsessed with criticism. And I know I talked about criticism yesterday. But instead of it being praise when appropriate, criticize when appropriate, it was criticism, criticism, criticism. I can do 10 videos praising games. The cumulative traffic of those 10 videos will not match one video where I dunk on a video game, where I'm just ripping the shit out of it. And I don't like being in that headspace all the time, which is part of the reason I backed away from doing a lot of gaming content. Because you either sacrifice a shit ton of traffic and be positive and encouraging, which I prefer to do. I prefer to talk about why things are good. But I find it's much more effective to do that live on Twitch. It's more authentic that way. So that people can see my honest reactions to early game versus later on. The rough start with Elden Ring and then getting into it. The big challenge I had with that game is getting over my idea that using a guide was cheating. They're weird. They're different that way. I mean, I made a point of platinum trophying Elden Ring, so that I could talk about it fairly, because that's an example of a game that does a lot of things amazingly well, which only make the things it doesn't do well more frustrating. I do think that after Elden Ring, Fromsoft has gotta be like, do your environmental storytelling, do your incomplete storytelling. That's cool, but they've gotta give about 10 to 15% more meat to the story so people can really follow the main plot. If you want to do all the piece it together and the side plots, go ahead. I like having my own headcanon for certain things. And let's face it, people are going to do it anyway. But I would really prefer more things in game that didn't require a guide, because it's too easy to get spoiled accidentally using guides because there's all that shit along the side and everything like that. But I have to hand it to Fromsoft. They make the games they want to make. They're deliberate choices. Nier Automata is another example of a game where I found the crappy maps really frustrating. And that was a game that was a real slow burn. I couldn't stand that game until you get to the big twist when all the alternate endings really start kicking in and mattering. And then it's like, okay, what I like about the game is it allows me to have whatever feelings I want in the early going, and then it twists on me. I don't feel like that game is trying to push me one way or the other into whether I should like the characters. And you want to repel me from something, try to force me to like something. And I don't think I'm alone there. And when you're reviewing, you have to err on the side of harsh within reason for the purpose of maximizing somebody's enjoyment. So it's better to go, look, these are potential flaws here. I'm still recommending the game. I had fun with it. But if you really can't stand, for instance, like there are some people, part of the reason I streamed early Elden Ring is because people were like, should I play it? There's mad hype. I'm like, let me show you the Fromsoft formula. And they saw the deaths where you lose your stuff and you might lose it permanently if you die again before they pick it up. And they went, nope, not for me. And that's not saying it's a bad game. That's saying not for me. And that's the purpose of reviews. It's not to shit on things for clicks. It's not to be gaming's morality police. It's to get the right products in the right people's hands. It's to match the players with stuff they'll enjoy. And that means being, that's the consumer advocacy piece that people talk about that. And you can't do that if you're not allowed to say anything negative about the game. But even before they were outright saying, you can't say anything bad. You can't say anything about this, this, and this. And again, there's a big difference between a spoiler guide, which I actually appreciated. I remember one game, there was a pretty extensive, like, do not spoil the following plot points. And I said to the marketing guy then, I really appreciated this. He's like, yeah, you didn't think it was too heavy-handed? I said, no, because I have a really hard time knowing what a spoiler is versus what a spoiler is not, because so many things that are considered spoilers now are what 2 decades ago would have been considered, this is the stuff we tell you to let you know if you're interested in the movie, TV show, or game, right? It would have been on the box description what the name of the country was or what the relationship between the 2 main characters were, right? Now that's a spoiler. And it's just gotten so impossible for me to read, coming at it from a literature background where you went in spoiled, oh, Shakespearean tragedies. Oh, spoiler. Why'd you have to tell me it was a tragedy? Right. Different. So I really appreciated that. But when a game says, don't make any comments about the depictions of women, don't make any comments about feminism, no, I would not accept that review copy if I'm going to be muzzled on certain topics. That's now marketing, and people should get paid for marketing. But I know there's plenty of people who are diehards about these franchises who just want the game early, and they'll do anything they want. And are marketers exploiting that? Yeah, absolutely. And this is the issue with the whole influencer culture, right? Influencers are marketers in their own right. They're there to influence. It's right in the name. But influencers are both marketers and the commodity they're marketing. And influencers tend to do best when they're very, very predictable. When they're not predictable, then they're not an easy source of confirmation bias to the people that want their biases confirmed, and they freak out. And that becoming the dominant way games are talked about has led to a loss of integrity when it comes to people giving their honest opinions. And, you know, the shit that's going on with the Twitch, Discord leaks right now. I haven't been able to look at the leaks, so I'm not going to be much help there. For people who don't know, there was a series of, influencers getting suspended, like Twitch streamers getting suspended for going over the line on things. And it was like, well, that person got suspended for going over this line. And then other people were like, wait, these people, who of course much bigger streamers, or streamers of a similar size, have done things that are equally, if not more bad. So they got suspended, and it's just all snowballed. But we've known Twitch has double standards for the really big streamers and then everyone else for a while. And again, there are people at Twitch that do give a shit about that stuff. They're just outranked by people who do not give a fuck. So, the end result is that trust and safety is just lip service at that company. And so many others, because money, got to keep the doors open. The financial models on these things are really precarious because they're all, at the end of the day, click farms, watch farms, right? And so you gotta give people what they want, not challenge them in any way. And when you stop challenging, when you have to be sincere. You can't just be a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian, unless you go, okay, devil's advocate, right? I've done that. I've said, I'm just going to be devil's advocate here. I'm not sure what I really think, because sometimes arguing the opposite viewpoint helps me figure out what I think. But I disclose that. I don't just drop a hot take to get people all riled up. And too many of the people who do really, really well do that. They'll either say something they don't really believe because it's the right thing to say, and then their behavior's inconsistent with that opinion, or they'll say something just to troll, just to get people angry, because rage clicks are more reliable to get than clicks for anything positive, right? And there's no integrity in that. And again, I'm not saying any one person is to blame for it. It did get significantly worse during the Feminist Frequency years, but I think that was something of this is going to sound terrible, but an opportunistic infection. The circumstances for a nice game would be a shame if anybody complained about it on feminist grounds, allegedly. That was already sort of there. And the nudge wink was that I didn't find very many people really cared about whether women felt comfortable in the gaming space. They wanted more women for various reasons, not all of them pure. And they really didn't give a shit if they were actually doing the right thing, as long as they didn't get yelled at. And that's when the slide really started, right? Because no matter what you do in gaming now, somebody freaks out, unless you're, what is that game called? Concord, that nobody talked about it. So it was just like, shut down. Like, it's better for people to hate you than for people to not notice you. And so we're in this race to the bottom, and I don't know how you pull out of that slide. I know that I do my part by cheerleading for companies. I do think nobody's perfect, but they come at things with integrity. There's a vision. They do care about people. As far as I know, they treat people well. And their mistakes are honest ones. Now, when companies get over a certain size, that gets more complicated, because in any large company, there are some great people, there are some assholes, and it's a constant, struggle for the soul of that company. And game companies are so big now that these are not simple things. And it's really, really hard to know what to think sometimes, especially in an environment where, like I said, it's, all stick, no carrot. People scream because they saw that people who screamed the loudest got attention. And so they think, if I scream even louder, I'll get attention this time. And instead of it being, is this a reasonable complaint? Well, if it's a reasonable complaint, it doesn't matter if one person says it or 100,000 people say it, right? But if people do that, oh, it's pandering, right? It's a real Kobayashi Maru. And that's where either someone's integrity shines or it completely falls apart. And because, look at Ubisoft right now. They had a rough year, just a rough year. Nintendo's had worse years. But they had one rough year and the vultures are circling, right? It's very hard to have integrity when people are trying to take over your company. And so you lose the integrity, the wholeness of your company, because you stood by your principles, and that's really freaking depressing. And indie gaming is worse because people are more desperate. People's dreams get exploited. Or, you work for peanuts, and then it's very likely 12 people will play your game, but at least you made it. Good for you. But if it does blow up, you get a Disco Elysium situation where that was a team of people really not ready for that level of fame and responsibility. So I like to offer solutions to problems, but right now I don't really know what they are other than a complete revamp, and that's not going to happen. So again, all we can really do is in our own reactions and in our own purchasing, try to have some integrity. So don't, be the master of adult tantrums, screaming and yelling because you think that's the best way to get attention. Make your case, conduct your argument, right? Like there's so many times that I've been, dogpiled for saying an unpopular thing only to be right later. Look at everybody's saying just stay offline because there's going to be Veilguard spoilers all over the place, because now it's considered acceptable to spoil the game if you're angry at it. I was labeled a transphobe for objecting to that tactic with Hogwarts Legacy. That once you legitimize a tactic, anybody can use it. Trust me, guys, you don't want that. Right? But, oh no, I was bad for a few months again. There are still some people who are weird about me that way, and they can't even remember what I allegedly did. It's like, oh no, she's on the bad list. Don't talk to her. And that's childish as well. If you can't, because it's not about whether or not you think the person did a bad thing. It's whether it's cool to say you like them or not. And I found that really gets in the way of discussions as well, because I'll just be saying, this is my issue I have with this particular element of a person, and someone will say, oh, Leanne, I know you don't like her. And it's like, I don't know her as a person. We're discussing this particular element of the content, not the whole of the person. I won't do that unless I actually know them well enough to have a read on them that way. And that is another part of integrity. It's about knowing what you don't know and staying in your lane to an extent. But it's also, admitting when you screwed up, coming clean, disclosing, trying to allow people to keep their dignity, but also tell the truth and as whole a truth as you can. And that is a lot more art than science. And all we can really ask people is that they try. My viewpoint on keeping things private matters has changed significantly in the last little bit because my eyes have really been opened to how much I was taken advantage of because I listened to the idea that, things should be private. I still believe that in theory, but I just have a different definition. When something's business, it's not private, it's professional. Private is strictly personal life, right? And if there's a compelling reason to keep something private, like a spoiler, like intellectual property secrets, stuff like that, yeah, for sure. But no one should be gagged from talking about a professional experience because it's just seen as improper or gauche somehow. People have to believe that you're coming at them straight. And it just got to the point for me that I was uncomfortable with how little I was saying about things. I had to be cryptic. And, then it came to the point where I had to do some disclosure because of the way things went down. And of course, a bunch of people got mad at me. But that's the thing about integrity. People will get angry at you for having it. There are a lot of decisions that are very subjective, and they are really much, how do you want to fail? Who do you want to piss off? What consequences are you prepared to accept? Because no consequences is not an option. And you don't get money in games by going in, especially when you're consulting and saying, well, somebody's going to be mad at you no matter what you do. There's no way to insulate. So what game are you trying to make? Let's allow you to stick to your vision as opposed to, being popular, because you never know what story is going to come out the wrong way, and it's going to trigger people, and it's not fair. It's not fair. And I'll close on this because this has been a long video. People expect games to be fair because games are games. You're expected to be able to beat the game. You're expected, if you put in enough work, to be able to complete it. And that extends into people's relationships with the gaming industry and game communities. Fairness is very, very important. And so that's why disclose unless there's a very good reason not to. Go out of your way for people to be able to trust what you say. Even if they don't like the way you say it, I have found over time the right people, the people who actually spend money on things, prefer it when you communicate, when you let them know what's going on, as opposed to trying to razzle dazzle it, But that's easy to say, hard to do, because that, the choice of when to pull the plug is, again, more art than science. It's gut. It's I can't do this anymore. I can't, pull one more rabbit out of my hat. I can't do another last minute scramble. I'm tired. And that is really what it comes down to in a lot of things. Part of wisdom as a leader is knowing when to call it. That's the whole Kobayashi Maru thing, right? And that's a big part of integrity that's been lost. We don't reward integrity. We really should start rewarding integrity. It's not just having the right opinions. It's about doing things for the right reasons. And the social skills I've seen with stuff have been so poor of late. We collectively, as an industry and as a community, have a lot of work to do. And we can only work with the people who want to do the work, right? So the first time in a really long time, I'll do the help support this channel. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Patrons get 1 extra video a week on Thursdays. It's part of the way I do like disclosure that I don't want to make super public yet. And then coffee, buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use but can't afford it. A lot of people with financial hardship right now. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this very long video. See you soon.